welcome to, I think, what are we on the 11th episode of Moore Up North. I'm so glad you're joining us tonight. We've got a great audience. We're down here at Bernie's Bungalow having a big old time. You're welcome to join us next week if you can get here in time. But lots of things to talk about tonight, and one of them is the media and how it's changing in Alaska. And you know, not everybody has the internet, I hear. So we've got lots of things to talk about, a great panel, great guests, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Moore Up North. I'm Shannon Moore, and like many of you, I didn't grow up with the television for most of my life in Alaska. And when I did, I got to meet new people. I felt like I knew them, and they became sort of friends. I trusted them while I was watching television to tell me about all kinds of things, good news and bad news. And there were incidents of plane crashes or drownings or snow machine wrecks, whatever, all the things that really make Alaska a dangerous place. And the news was brought to us every night by all sorts of different places, but I sort of became friends with my next guest through television before she even knew I existed. And I'm really glad Julie Hasquet's here. She was an anchor and a reporter for Channel 2 News for 17 years. And welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shannon. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and obviously other people felt the same way about you on the news. And now, of course, you're the press secretary for Senator Mark Begich. But I want to talk about a little bit, when you first came to Alaska, you had just left journalism school.
Yep.
You are a real journalist, which I am not one. But you came from this school and you were told all the formulas, and then you came to Alaska. What was different about Alaska and giving the news to Alaskans that you didn't learn at school that surprised you?
Well, I had grown up in Southern California and watched all sorts of television stations and all sorts of newscasters for years. So then I come to Alaska in 1986, fresh out of San Diego State, and it was culture shock for a number of reasons. But what I quickly learned about journalism in Alaska, and especially TV, was just the intimacy with which you get to know your subjects and your audience. And the state was so vast. We traveled a ton. We went all over. Wherever the story was, we got to go. You know your politicians on a first-name basis. So it was nothing like I had ever expected growing up watching fires and murders in LA. I just came here, but it had been my dream.
How could you drag yourself away from such good times?
Well, I wanted to be a television journalist
we have fires.
Since I was in the 4th grade. And so when I got my job offer in Alaska, my mom said, "You're going where?" And I came here and I worked at Channel 2, like you said, for 17 years. And 25 years later, I'm still here, but doing something else now.
So since 4th grade, so were you like practicing with your hairbrush? Like, today, my mom made meatloaf at my house.
No,
Is that what you're doing?
I watched Barbara Walters and Connie Chung. They were like and Jessica Savage, who ended up dying tragically, I think from cocaine. But there was not very many people as I was growing up not very many females doing the news on a national level. So I've always been very inquisitive, ask a lot of questions. You know, I'm super direct, as anyone who can attest to who knows me. And
I know. You know what? They should just give up waterboarding totally and put Julie Hasquet in there. She will get it out of them.
And reporting is like a license to ask questions, so I loved it.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so when you came up here, there was a lot more money available in the newsrooms. And over the last several years, we've seen the ADN losing people left and right. Channel 2 doesn't cover as broad as stories, I don't think, as they used to. And in a place like Alaska, and the reason I wanted to talk about this is that I think how we get our information is just really canned right now, more so now than it used to be. It used to be the whole state felt sort of local, and now there's not the same money or interest or influence going into that. And I mean, part of what we want to do with the panel tonight is to figure out where people can get more information about what's local to them in Alaska, because that means a lot of different things to different people. But how much different is it, do you think, where the news is coming from now as opposed to what it was when you got here, say?
Well, it's vastly different. I mean, I think through the late 80s and all through the 90s, when I was a journalist, people's primary source was newspapers and television. That's where they got all of their news. Now, with the internet and blogs and the instantaneous news cycle, it's completely changed. Like, I don't even know if I could function as a journalist today because I wouldn't know what to do with all these new tools. But we did travel a ton, wherever, I mean, to Channel 2's credit, and I can only speak for Channel 2 because that's the only place I ever worked. It didn't matter where the story was, we went and we covered it all over the state. And because of the newscast was on the statewide RATNet, Rural Alaska Television Network, which I think is called something else now.
Because RATNet just sounded like something you needed a trap for.
Yeah, and so we just went where the story was. And I think now I'm not in news anymore, but I still work with reporters and am very closely involved with the media. And it's definitely changed. I mean, I think you still see some travel, but not as much. Everybody is cutting back. They're putting their resources on the internet. They're making sure their websites are as dynamic as their television product or their radio product. And it's changed dramatically.
So I know when Steve McDonald was let go from Channel 2, there was a Facebook page, and I'm only using this not to pick on Channel 2 or Steve McDonald at all, but to say that he was let go once Channel 2 brought in someone who was a new manager from out of state.
And changed owners.
And it changed owners. And so they were letting him go, and they were going to get some new, fresh faces up here that weren't so old or wise or whatever they thought he was at that point. And the outcry from Alaskans was so outrageous.
Yeah.
It was. I wrote a letter to the manager and said, you don't understand. In Alaska, I've had this man tell me about people who I've cared about, who I've grown up with, who have passed tragically or not tragically, but he covers things that are important to me, and I trust him to sort of take me through these bends and turns in the news cycle. And that's important. And you know, there are definitely other news people on different stations that are able to do that too. It's not exclusive to him, but I think that relationship between Alaskan newsmakers or the people that are reporting the news and Alaskans who are consuming it is way closer than other places.
Oh, absolutely. I think the new owners and the new management completely underestimated the relationship that Alaskans have with their news people, especially the folks like Steve McDonald who have been around for 2 decades plus. And that was a huge wake-up call that you don't just dismiss the folks who have been here a long time, because there will be an outcry. And they brought Steve back. I think that was awesome. There's not a lot of journalists in this state right now with that longevity, with that institutional knowledge, who can take a story and remember the Exxon Valdez oil spill or whatever event that happened many, many years ago that puts things in context. So, but I mean, I haven't been on television for 7 years, and people still stop me and say, I miss you on the news, or are you still on the news? So they just have a relationship where they really grab onto that. And that was a huge wake-up call, I think, to watch the outcry for Steve and to bring him back, because people like their newscasters, and in Alaska, we like them to stick around for a while.
We do, and it's funny how people feel like they know you if you're any part of the news. I'm not a news person, but just being in media at all, people will come up and say, oh, you got your hair cut.
Yeah.
Or they'll send you an email and say, enough with all the makeup, or geez, could you get some more?
Right.
Like they're your consultant.
And don't you want to say, well, let me see what you have on right now?
I'm like, well, the next time.
Because I'd kind of like to comment on your hair.
Yeah, the next time you're on MSNBC,
yeah,
I'll let you know what
exactly.
I think. Yeah, it is funny. So anyway, well, we're making these transitions right now from old media to new media, and I think Alaska especially is having some growing pains with that.
Yes.
And I want to ask you real quick, what do you think that there were stories that we don't report because of that closeness? Because Sarah Palin basically got a pass. She wasn't vetted. I mean, she got vetted by the blogs, frankly. Mm-hmm. And there were different issues going on with her before, and Bill Allen, the things going on with Vico. I mean, it certainly wasn't just Palin. This stuff was out there, but people didn't cover it here, and I don't know. Do you have any idea why that is?
I think there's several reasons. A couple of them are, one, we're so small population-wise, and we do feel much more connected to each other, that people are more careful, even the journalists, in what they cover and in how they cover it. And it's harder to confirm things because there's not that many people talking. And so maybe to the good or maybe to the bad, things don't get reported. But I think it's because people do feel so close to each other. And if you screw up in Alaska and you get something wrong, everybody knows. Right. It's not like, oh, we just forget about that because we watch 17 stations. And so I actually am pleased to see people be a little more careful. I know you feel like a lot of things didn't get covered, and maybe they didn't. But I think that's why it's that dynamic of we all feel very close to each other. And if you're a journalist and you're going to report something, you better be darn sure that it's true. Because if it's not, they're going to stop you in the grocery store and everywhere else. And that's if you still have your job. So it's very
Or if
interesting.
you don't, and you're just bagging groceries for people. They're
Yeah.
like, hey, yeah, I remember that story you told about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I'd like paper now that you've put it all in plastic.
Right.
Could you
But
work
no,
on that?
this is a great state to be a journalist in, though. Boy, I had some great times in 17 years. I got to do some awesome stories.
You did, and now you're doing some more of them with Mark Begich.
I try to help mold them.
And you
I try
do.
to give advice
Hi,
to reporters.
If you hear this, hi, this is Julie Hasquet. It's time to listen. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, I'm Shannon Moore. We'll be right back with more Up North.